Can a democratic socialist get elected president?
I think a democratic socialist can get elected anywhere across this country for any position. What I think we need to bring is a focus on working people.
If you're not paying, it's because somebody else is. And if you want to say it's the wealthy that's going to be paid, well, if they're taking their asses out of New York City, who's going to be here to pay it? Eventually, it'll trickle down to that middle class that was supposed to be being spared. And where's that going to leave the city? That is what Mamdani is speaking to. That is what he's focusing on. That is what is resonating. But in the end, what it's going to do is serve to divide the Democratic Party. It's not going to have any effect on the Republicans as it pertains to what their plan of action is, because they're going to ask you to choose between capitalism and socialism.
Stephen A. Smith is warning Democrats that Manny could be a big problem for their party, and they should really pay attention. This is someone on their own side, saying that the same candidate they're supporting could end up hurting the party even more than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden did. So, what did Stephen A. Smith see that made him speak out? And how are people in the party reacting to what he said? We put together all the clips you need to watch. Feel free to share your thoughts after you see them. Now here's Stephen A. Smith exposing Manny.
Zohran Mamdani is coming. He's gaining traction. I am not a socialist, nor do I aspire to see socialism in the United States of America. I don't know anywhere in the world where true socialism has worked. I don't see it. I don't know where communism has worked. I don't see it. And I know the president of the United States is calling the mayor of New York a communist. No, he calls himself a socialist. That's what I'm going to go with. He's a democratic socialist. He swears it's working in New York City. I'm not so sure, but listen to Mamdani with this quote right here. Let me read this to you. Quote, I think a democratic socialist can get elected anywhere across this country for any position. I think we're seeing a hunger that is not just felt by New Yorkers, but frankly, by Americans from coast to coast for a new kind of politics, one that puts working people at the heart of it. This is what Mamdani is saying. He's talking about working people because he knows that's the language everybody wants to hear. He knows they're not interested in hearing anything.
If you listen closely, you probably noticed exactly how Stephen A. Smith called out Mamdani right as it was happening. Smith says Mamdani is saying whatever connects with the party's supporters, giving them exactly what they want to hear without thinking about the long-term effect it could have on the Democratic Party. Smith believes Manny's socialist message is helping him get more attention, more support, and more influence inside the party. But here is the big question. What happens when someone with that kind of message has to face the whole country, where voters have many different opinions? That is what Stephen A. talks about next. And what he says might completely surprise you. Stay with us, because this is where the story gets even more interesting, and you will not want to miss what happens next.
If you're a Democrat in the United States, particularly in New York City, Zohran Mamdani is coming. And if he's coming, what does that mean for the rest of America? Because I got questions. Where has socialism ever succeeded? If so, tell us where that is. How is it going to succeed in New York? How are you going to sell that in a capitalistic society? You might do it in New York with young voters. What about the people in the suburbs? What about them? You really think this kind of message is going to resonate with them? Because, ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about here is this. If it resonates within the Democratic Party, but it doesn't have a snowball's chance of resonating in a general election, then you're basically handing the presidency to the GOP in 2028 as well.
That is exactly the point Stephen A. is trying to make. He says America has always been a capitalist country, and it has been built on those ideas for generations. And that basic reality does not suddenly change just because a message becomes popular with certain groups of people. Right now, Mamdani's socialist message is clearly connecting with young voters in the Democratic Party and getting one part of the party excited. But Stephen A. warns that the same message may not work when it reaches the national stage, where voters come from many different backgrounds and are much less open to that kind of idea. In fact, Stephen A. goes even further by asking how socialism could really work in a city like New York, let alone across the entire country. He is truly doubtful about how it could work in real life, and he explains why those doubts should matter to Democrats as they look ahead. This is one part of the story you will not want to miss.
Is he right? Affordability being a real problem? You're damn right he is. Is he right that the working class has been ignored? You're damn right he is. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last year, the top 1%, when you look at some of these people and what they bring to the table, about the top 10 richest people in the country, you know, they've generated nearly or more than $500 billion for themselves. Whereas over the last several decades, people have been lucky if they got a $9,000 raise, spanning decades. That is what Mamdani is speaking to. That is what he's focusing on. That is what is resonating. But in the end, what it's going to do is serve to divide the Democratic Party. It's not going to have any effect on the Republicans as it pertains to what their plan of action is, because they're going to ask you to choose between capitalism and socialism.
Now here is the main point. Stephen A. Smith says that if Mamdani keeps pushing socialism as part of the Democratic Party's platform, it will only create more division inside the party while doing almost nothing to change Republican voters. Instead, Republicans would likely sit back and watch the Democrats fight among themselves. Yes, it is true that prices keep going up, rich people are getting richer, and many poor people are falling even further behind. No one is denying that. But according to Stephen A., socialism is not the answer to that growing problem. He believes it would end up making everyone poorer instead of fixing the economy. In his view, that would be bad for the country's future, both financially and politically. Stephen A. says this is exactly why Republicans would use Mamdani's socialist message against Democrats in the 2028 election, making it one of their biggest attacks. He believes this is a warning Democrats cannot afford to ignore.
What I want to know is that when you freeze rent, what else have you frozen? Have you frozen the price of equipment? Have you frozen maintenance? Have you frozen those things? Because those things still need to happen, and it costs. Nothing's free. And if you're talking about taxing, and more taxing, excuse me, you're going to run businesses out of New York City, and then ultimately, where's the money going to come from? To develop a middle class, let alone pay them.
Stephen A. brings up some really important questions, and he believes Democratic Party leaders should think carefully about them before giving Manny more power. He says Manny talks a lot about ideas like freezing rent or giving people major housing help. Those ideas may sound great at first, but then Stephen A. asks the next big question. How do apartment buildings stay in good shape and remain safe to live in if landlords are not bringing in enough rental money? How do buses and trains keep running if rides are free and there is no fair money to help pay for repairs and daily costs? How do stores keep their shelves full if the government is expected to make basic needs free or heavily discounted? And if the plan is to pay for all of this with higher taxes, then another big problem comes up. What happens if businesses decide the taxes are too high and choose to leave New York altogether? Stephen A. says that is the same kind of pattern many people believe has already happened in California. He argues these are not just made-up concerns. They are real questions that Democrats need to face and think about right now.
Nothing is free, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely, positively, nothing is free. If you're not paying, it's because somebody else is. And if you want to say it's the wealthy that's going to be paid, well, if they're taking their asses out of New York City, who's going to be here to pay it? Eventually, it'll trickle down to that middle class that was supposed to be being spared. And where's that going to leave the city?
Stephen A. says this is one of the biggest problems with the idea. He argues that if wealthy people decide to leave the city or even the country to find places with lower taxes, then the next question is easy to answer. Who ends up paying those high taxes? The middle class. According to him, they would carry most of the burden. So in the end, he believes it would hurt the same middle-class families that Mamdani says he wants to help and protect. Stephen A. says this is the basic problem he sees with socialism. In his view, it becomes a cycle that ends up working against itself. He argues that it can come back and hurt the very people it was supposed to support in the first place. Stephen A. says that is why many critics believe large-scale socialist systems have struggled or failed over time and see them as a risky choice. He believes history has shown this pattern more than once, and he says Democrats should pay close attention to it before it's too late.
See what else Mamdani said? He said, quote, "We don't have to ask ourselves what life looks like if a socialist wins. I won last November. And over the course of these last 6 months, what we've delivered for working people are the very things we were told were impossible. And we've done all of these things while also delivering the lowest recorded crime in our city's history. That's what it looks like to have democratic socialism. And what you're seeing is that New Yorkers experienced this for 6 months and made the decision that they wanted to see more of it on the national stage as well. I'm not buying that yet, but it sounds damn good."
The state of Florida now has almost 4 million more residents than New York State does, yet New York's budget is over twice as large as the state of Florida's. New York City, with 8 million people, has a larger budget than the entire state of Florida, and yet our infrastructure is better, our roads are better, our services are better. And so these are choices. They don't respect the taxpayers in these places, and people have rebelled.
So in the first clip, we see Zohran Mamdani saying that his socialist-leaning policies have actually made life better for everyday New Yorkers, and he paints it like things are improving in a real and clear way. But Ron DeSantis quickly jumps in and pushes back strongly against that idea. According to DeSantis, New York's budget is actually bigger than Florida's. And even with all that spending, he says there is not much to show when it comes to real results. He claims New York still has old, worn-out infrastructure, roads that are in bad shape, and an economy that is not performing well compared to how much money the state spends. So DeSantis asks a simple but important question. Where's this so-called socialist dream world that Zohran Mamdani has been promising New Yorkers all this time? If the money is being spent but people are not seeing the results, then something does not add up. And that difference is exactly what DeSantis wants people to stop and think about carefully. Now listen closely to what DeSantis says next.
Now, it's not just taxes. You have homeless problem. You obviously have had crime problem in some of these areas for a number of years. You've had Soros DAs. You know, we've had Soros DAs in Florida. I'm the only governor that's removed them from their posts. But it really starts with being a friend of the taxpayer. So we have no state income tax in Florida, which we're going to keep. We have a sales tax, but the necessities of life are actually exempt. So food, medication, baby items, you don't even pay sales tax on that. And so if somebody is struggling trying to make ends meet, you know, we've done a lot to reduce the burdens on that.
Ron DeSantis argues that New York does not need to fully turn to socialism just to deal with the real problems the middle class is facing. He points out that there are already many programs in the United States that work in a socialist-style way. He mentions things like Medicaid, Obamacare, and SNAP benefits, which are all meant to help people who are going through hard times. These programs are there to support people when they need help, without forcing the whole country to change its entire economic system. That on top of that, DeSantis also says that some states and local governments even give tax relief to help reduce the heavy pressure of taxes on regular people, especially those in the middle class and lower income groups. In his opinion, all of this shows that support systems already exist within a capitalist system. And because of that, he believes Zohran Mamdani's push for full socialism is not the only answer or the necessary solution he is trying to present it as.
Can a democratic socialist get elected president?
I think a democratic socialist can get elected anywhere across this country for any position. What I think we need to bring is a focus on working people.
And that's the direction that the party should go in terms of selecting a candidate for 2028.
I think the direction that the party should go in is how best to fight for working people. I think we need to have a platform and a vision that doesn't sound as if it was cooked up by consultants, but instead one that you would say in response to someone who's asking, why can't I afford my rent? Why can't I afford my groceries? Why can't I afford my childcare? We need to make clear who we stand for, how we're going to stand for them, and that we're actually willing to fight for them when the going gets tough.
Now that is especially interesting because we've already gone over why critics say socialism can struggle over time and may not fully protect the very people it is meant to help. The whole Zohran Mamdani situation is not likely to change Republican voters in any real way. If anything, it could end up being used as a political tool against Democrats, in the same way wokeness has been used in recent years to attack the party. It is the kind of story that can stick in people's minds, and Republicans know how to take that kind of message and use it in future elections. Realistically, Democrats would benefit more from dealing with the Zohran Mamdani debate early, before it grows bigger and causes even more division inside the party. The chance to fix or adjust course may be smaller than it looks, and Stephen A.'s warning seems to be coming at a very important moment when it really matters.
I'm doing this segment because I can't wait to talk to him. I've been anxious to have him on the show to ask him some of these questions. I'm waiting to see whether or not he's going to accept it and what he's going to have to say once he ultimately does. Because in the end, the money has to come from somewhere. Nothing is free, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely, positively, nothing is free. If you're not paying, it's because somebody else is. And if you want to say it's the wealthy that's going to be paid, well, if they're taking their asses out of New York City, who's going to be here to pay it?
Ultimately, Stephen A. Smith's warning comes down to this. Manny's socialist message may energize the Democratic base, but it could also create deeper divisions inside the party instead of bringing it together. He also raises practical concerns about funding, housing, and transportation that, in his view, still do not have clear answers. Critics also argue that socialism can sometimes end up hurting the very people it is meant to help. Ron DeSantis adds that there are already systems in place that help ease the burden on the middle class without needing a complete change in the country's economic system. Instead of helping Democrats, Mamdani's rise could give Republicans a strong talking point to use in the 2028 election. Stephen A.'s message is straightforward. He believes Democrats ignore this warning at their own political risk. And with that, we come to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget to share your thoughts on the Mamdani effect on the Democratic Party. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.